Before you start off and buy that waterfront condo in California, Florida, or anywhere else, you need to know that these condos in America are going through what I would call a midlife crisis. What do I mean by this? Well, right now, so many condo owners are going broke just trying to deal with all the issues that are coming up with owning these condos. And when I tell you that there are a lot of issues, it's not an exaggeration. Condo owners are losing their homes and investment because of this. I'm going to go through all the things that you need to watch out for if you're thinking about buying it for yourself or as a rental investment property. If you already own one of these condos, you might consider selling it before these problems become yours. So what am I talking about here? It's easy to just get whiplash when you're trying to follow the news about these type of condos today. On the one hand, you hear stories like this one from The Atlantic that basically says, we need more of these type of condos in order to ease the housing pressure in the local markets. And then you also hear the opposite sides of the story, like what's happening in Florida with the Surfside condo building that completely collapsed, killing 98 people in the process. So to find out more about what's really happening, we really need to look at the reasons why these condos in America are facing these major crises. Many condos are now reaching an age where they need a literal facelift. Every 40 years, condos are required to go through what is called a 40-year re-inspection. These inspections check for things like structural issues, electrical issues, things that are safety related for the building. These inspections are designed to basically protect the people who are living in this building from the building having major failures like what we saw on Surfside in Florida. Building owners and HOA should consult a structural engineer in order to have an inspection completed as their building gets near to the 40-year age. When it comes time for a 40-year property assessment, the property owners will receive notice that an inspection is due. At that time, the property owners will typically have 90 days to find a structural engineer and to complete the inspection of the building and submit that report to either the city or the county. The report will indicate what part of the building, if any, is necessary for repair or replacement. The property owners will then have another 180 days to complete the necessary work and repairs. Following the complete repair, the structural engineer will then prepare another report verifying that all the initial findings were remedied. Buildings on or near the ocean, for example, are especially vulnerable because they constantly are exposed to an increased effect of the salt water and its oxidation. And then what happens is this leads to excessive corrosion, as well as minor concrete and masonry cracks. Stucco left exposed to the element can cause the rebar to expand up to several times its original size, exerting forces of 10,000 pounds per square inch. This condition, commonly referred to as spalling, can necessitate extreme expensive cost for the concrete to be repaired. Hundreds of thousands of dollars can be saved in a building repair cost alone by following regular maintenance schedules and applying for early detection methods and practicing aggressive prevention techniques. However, this is not the case for a lot of these homeowners associations. Failure to submit the required recertification report will result in issuance of a civil violation notice or ticket without further notice to your board or management company, and potential referral of this matter to the unsafe structural unit that could potentially lead to the initiation of condemnation for that building. You may be liable for payments of up to maximum fines of $10,000, and in addition, you must also pay all the enforcement costs incurred by the department once the unsafe structure enforcement proceedings commence. So this is a lot of money. Even more alarming, upon issuance of this unsafe structure notice of violation, the building must be vacated, and then you may ultimately have that building demolished, like the condo complex in National City, as you can see here. The problem comes when the HOA doesn't have enough money to to pay for these repairs that are needed as a result of this inspection. The HOA is then forced to raise the monthly HOA dues or forced to file a special assessment for the homeowners to all kick in. Residents of this Miami condominium are upset about their 40-year recertification and what they say they will have to pay. There is a vote soon on whether or not a plan will be approved to pay for the cost of this Miami condominium, and the cost can be excess of $200,000 for the homeowners and the HOA fees. The bill is a $200,000 lump sum that could also be paid over a 20-year span for an additional $1,300 a month for this recertification. And this could potentially raise the homeowners' HOA dues to over $4,500 per month. This collapse at the Chamberlain Tower South condominium in Surfside killed 98 of its residents. So states like Florida are very serious when it comes to recertifying buildings. Recertification laws passed after this tragedy could leave many of these condo owners with a rude awakening. That wake-up call comes in the form of special assessments of up to 6 figures for owners of older 2-bedroom condos. These special assessments are needed to bring the property and the building in line with newly established standards. According to a legislative analysis, there exists more than 1.5 million condominium units in Florida operated by almost 28,000 condo associations. Of this total, about 912,000 housing units, home for more than 2 million residents, are more than 30 years old. Many of these owners will be then hammered by the special assessment that they cannot afford to pay. And the decision will be made by a condo board with no experience in construction management. When condos hit middle age, their internal systems start to fail. And after about 30 years, for example, most condominiums will need to replace their elevators, their heating and cooling systems. And at age 50, the buildings most likely will need to replace their windows and plumbing. And depending on the quality of the initial construction, some of these properties will possibly need structural repair. And unfortunately, many of these associations have put off a lot of these repairs over the years. Deferred maintenance isn't specific to condos, but it's complicated by 2 problems. The first is a collective action problem, and the second is a financialization of the housing. And what do I mean by that? Obstacles that keep people with common interests from working together is what is referred to as a collective action problem. Condo complexes are susceptible to collective action problems because it involves multiple owners. Sometimes these owners have conflicting interests in the property. It's easy to vote against repairing the complex's pool, for example, if you never swim in it. At other times, the owners will agree on the problems, but not the solution. Some may want to fix the pool, while others may decide that they just want to get rid of it. In condo complexes, collective action problems often emerge around condominium fees. Associations then have to levy and increase the fees annually, but the owners push back to limit them from doing so. Small fee increases, however, then means that the deferred maintenance will add up to a bigger cost down the line. When this happens, the condo association will have insufficient reserves and funds in order to pay for all of these property repairs. And so as a result, they have to levy special assessments, which is a one-time fee in order to cover all of these costs. Sometimes these assessments can be exorbitant. In the example of Chamberlain Towers, for example, that collapsed, its condo association tried to levy an $80,000 assessment, but it was too little too late. Collective action problems can happen in any complex, but are more likely to happen in the older complexes, and it hurts the lower and middle income owners the most. Not surprisingly, these owners often balk at the annual increases and when the assessments are then imposed. Many don't even pay it because they just can't. When this happens, the condo association can then take the owners to to court for that cost and the deferred maintenance. Going to court takes time, costs money, and isn't always successful. But the deferred maintenance can draw the attention of the municipal authorities, where they then come into the property with force and force the occupants to leave by red tagging the entire building, which is exactly what happened in the National City building. The other problem is the financialization of the housing. The early 2000s real estate boom and bust, which we've all experienced, also created a lot of problems for condominiums. Initially, the boom was fantastic. It was good for all the condos. Prices went up, even on the older buildings. But now that we know what happened with all of those predatory lendings from the banks during the 2008 mortgage crash. When the market crashed, condo associations faced three problems. First, borrowers with subprime loans saw their monthly payments rise very sharply, and many responded by just simply not paying their HOA condo dues. Second, the banks were slow to foreclose on these properties, extending the time that the associations went without their HOA fees. And when the banks finally did foreclose on the property, they often failed to pay these HOA dues as well. Third, efforts to rein in the predatory lending slowed down the condo sales at that time, and many of the associations needed the people to purchase these foreclosed condos in order to pay those fees. Likewise, the FHA, which underwrites many first-time homebuyer mortgages, started requiring condo associations to win pre-approval in order for FHA buyers to purchase their units. Some requirements were very difficult to meet. For example, associations with a lot of investor-held units often couldn't even qualify to meet these requirements because it needed a majority of the units to be owner-occupied. These complexes were spread across metro areas, and they had two things in common. They were middle-aged, and they were located in low and middle income areas. The pandemic has only worsened this situation for the condos similar to this. There are no easy answers, unfortunately, for aging condominiums with limited reserves. So condos are going to need potentially municipal lifelines in order to form a low interest loan or grants to prevent dissolution. But there are things that municipal and state governments can do to prevent condos from falling into disrepair in the first place. Right now, FHA already requires condominium complexes eligible for FHA mortgages to meet these reserve requirements. States and municipalities could provide incentives for properties to come up to FHA standard. States could also standardize rules on how complexes within their borders report budget information to prospective buyers. Doing so would make it easier for buyers to be able to compare across multiple properties and then encourage all the properties to meet a baseline requirement. Condos are an important part of the American housing stock, and they are often more affordable than single family and better suited for people who just didn't need or didn't care to maintain larger homes. The healthier the condos are, the more equitable and wider the housing markets can be. To make matters worse, insurance companies like Allstate, State Farm, and Farmers are no longer providing insurance coverage in these states like Florida, where most of these condos are coming up on their 40-year inspection. This only adds salt to the wound for the homeowners who are now having to deal with this potential cost that they are just completely not ready for. The fact is, a great many of these owners will endure these problems for the next 36 to 60 months, in which there will be major changes in the condo living environment in the state of Florida. If you want to know more about how many HOAs will likely triple their fees, watch this video that I've just included in this link here. And if you think you might be one of these condo owners that are going through and having to face these 40-year re-inspections and you just don't know what to do, reach out to me and I'll provide you with more information regarding what you need to do next. This can then range from talking to an attorney and seeing what your rights and options are to potentially consider selling your condo before the complex faces these sort of problems. And I'm not saying that you're going to pass this problem on to someone else, but rather you can disclose this as a part of the sale, and it might just save yourself headaches later. A qualified real estate agent will be able to advise you. And as always, my name is Scott, and you've been Real Estate Informed.